Okay, I'm going to try and give you a super quick run through of the second example exam. Just got to get the camera pointing at the board. Okay, so I'm seriously short of time, but I'll see what I can do here. So we're going to start with question 1, and maybe I'll turn the lights on. Okay, so question 1. We got an isolated country with competitive markets, and we've got car transport. And the demand for car transport is given by P is P naught minus Q, where Q is kilometers and P is dollars per kilometer. The unit cost is unit cost is W1 plus W2 n bar minus n squared. So if n, nitrogen emissions per kilometer, are equal to n bar, then that's 0 and there's no extra cost, we just have baseline costs. But if you cut n below n bar, you add costs. And of course, if the total costs of driving some number of kilometers is unit costs times Q, and then we've also got damages. Theta E, which is also going to be theta. So what is E? E is kilometers driven times emissions per kilometer. Okay. So, what happens in laissez-faire? In laissez-faire, we're going to have n equals n bar, quite obviously. So then the problem is just finding Q, and the representative firm is going to set out to maximize profits, which are PQ minus costs. So, not surprisingly, and of course, P is exogenous to the representative firm, so we don't put this in here, we're in perfect competition. So then when we take the first order condition, we simply get that the price, P, which we can now substitute in for this, P naught minus Q, is equal to this, having differentiated with respect to Q. Oh, and we know, sorry, that n equals n bar, so that goes away. So we just get P naught minus Q equals W1, Q equals P naught minus W1. That's laissez-faire. And n equals n bar. A planner, so this is maximized subject given the choice of Q, but the planner chooses Q and n to maximize pi, which is the integral between naught and Q of P naught minus Q dQ minus costs minus damages, theta Q n. So the first order condition in Q gives us, so when we differentiate this with respect to Q, we just get back P naught minus Q this minus this equals naught, so we can take it over and say equals W1 plus W2 n bar minus n squared minus theta n. So that's the first order condition in Q. First order condition in N. So then, let's go inside here, we've got minus 2W2 n bar minus n. And then go in again, and we got minus minus, so it's plus 2W2 n bar minus n Q minus theta Q equals naught. Okay, so the Q's go out, and we just have this. 2W2 n bar minus n equals theta, or W2 n bar minus n is theta over 2. So from this, we can easily find n here, can't we? So it's basically, because of the linearity in damages, whatever the quantity produced, you're always going to abate the same amount per kilometer. Okay, you're going to basically use the same technology, whatever the scale of driving in the country, because of the linear damages. Okay, makes total sense, and that's why we can just find n here without reference to Q. Okay, so n bar minus n is theta over 2W2, so n is n bar minus theta over 2W2. So then what's Q? So Q is going to be quite messy, isn't it? Q is P0 minus W1, which is what we got in laissez-faire. So obviously n is less than n bar, so n is lower in the planar solution. And Q is P0 minus W1 plus theta n. Oh no, 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 no. P0 minus Q minus P0 minus Q minus 2W2 n bar minus n Q. Oh, sorry, first order condition in Q is P0 minus Q minus this lot minus theta n equals naught. So when we take them over, we get plus there. Whoa, whoa, whoa. So Q is P0 minus W1 minus theta n minus W2 n bar minus n squared. Okay, and of course we could stick in the values for n and get stuff out if we wanted. Like n bar minus n squared is theta over 2W2 squared, isn't it? But really, the point is here that it's lower. Quantity, you reduce quantity, and you reduce the amount you drive, and you clean up. you're driving. Technology. Assume that emissions of each car can be measured by a cheap device attached to the exhaust pipe, which sends data to a regulator or authority, blah blah blah. What price should be set? I'm just going to pause for a sec. Okay, what price should be set? Now, in general, how do we solve this kind of thing? We set up the regulator's problem with the price included, and then we solve it with the tax or the price as a variable, and then we say, look, what tax will give us this solution? But actually, here we can just say, look, damages are linear in emissions and they're theta times emissions. So in first best, to achieve the first best solution, we know that you should set the tax per unit of emissions equal to theta, the marginal damages from each unit of emissions. And we can be totally confident that that will give us the optimum. Okay. Why is it harder to regulate emissions of N2O or nitrous oxide from cars than it is to regulate emissions of CO2 from cars if we want to get towards first best? Two reasons. One is measurability. Because CO2 emissions are directly linked to fuel use, so you can tax the input, and you know basically you'll be perfectly taxing the polluting byproduct. But that is not the case with nitrous oxide. There's no clean link to the amount of fuel use. It depends on exactly how your engine is tuned, how it's running, etc. Basically, if you burn at high temperature, you get more nitrous oxide than if you burn at low temperature. It's the simplest aspect of the whole thing, or one of the key aspects. So that's the first problem with taxing nitrous oxide emissions. What's the second problem? My mind's gone blank. Yeah, of course. The other problem is that nitrous oxide isn't uniformly mixing, is it? Carbon dioxide is uniformly mixing, so wherever and whenever you emit it, it's going to cause the same damages because it mixes in with the carbon dioxide in the atmosphere and causes damages over time. Whereas with nitrous oxide, it's not uniformly mixing, is it? So the damages are going to differ depending on where you emit it and when you emit it. So that makes it also much trickier to regulate, to get an optimal regulation. Okay. On the other hand, it's slightly less problematic because it's a local pollutant, so we don't need international agreements and so on to deal with it. So how do we deal with these tricky aspects? Well, that's not in the question, and part of the reason for that is I don't want to kind of take away your options in question 3 or force you to repeat yourself. So I ask very little and very specific stuff in this question. But of course, one of the ways around it is things like local emissions zones, or local, what do they call them, but clean zones where you just can't take in, for instance, diesel cars. Another way is just to set standards on emissions from diesel cars. And in the US we know that they set very tough standards. So you just can't put your diesel car on the road unless you have very strong measures in the engine to deal with nitrous oxide emissions. Okay, that is question 1 of example exam 2. Okay, and question 2, I'm not going to go through because I've already gone through it. It's the same as in example exam number 1. And question 3, I'm not going to go through that one either, okay? You have to think about that one for yourselves. I don't think there's much point in me going on about that in front of the camera. It's really one that we could discuss. If anyone wants to talk about it, get in touch with me, okay? But I'm not going to go through it on camera. So I'm going to jump to question 4. Okay, question 4. Actually, no, I'm going to stop again and clean the board. Okay. We now have a beautifully clean board, and I have 12 minutes to try and go through this question. Okay. So we've got carbon dioxide emissions and 2 coalitions. Baseline production in each of the coalitions is Y bar, but actual production is lower because of damages and abatement effort. Baseline emissions are E bar, and actual emissions are as follows. E1 is E bar 1 minus A1, and E2 is E bar 1 minus A2. So A2 is the proportion of the baseline, which is abated, isn't it? And then we've got damages. Psi1 is phi1 E. Psi2 is phi2E, where E is E1 plus E2, of course. And then Y1 is Y bar 1 minus psi1, so 1 minus phi1 E, and E is actually E bar phi1 E bar 1 minus A1 plus 1 minus A2, 2 minus A1 minus A2, isn't it? I'll put a square bracket on here. So that's that, and then minus theta A1 squared. By symmetry, Y2 is Y bar 1 minus theta 2 E bar 2 minus A1 minus A2 minus theta A2 squared. Okay. So in first best, we've got pi is Y1 plus Y2, and we're trying to maximize pi through choice of A1 and A2. Okay, and the first order condition in A1, so I'm not going to write these out, but we think of these in here, yeah. Y1 is this, and Y2 is that. First order condition in A1, we get Y bar times minus minus theta 1 E bar. Minus 2 theta A1 minus minus theta 2 E bar. So it's theta 1 plus theta 2 E bar. naught. So then we can actually just put an equal sign here and go like this, can't we? And then the first order condition in A2 by symmetry is going to be θ1 plus θ2 E bar equals 2 theta A2. Sorry, did I say theta? Phi1 plus phi2 E bar is 2 theta A2. So that's first best, isn't it? A1 equals phi1 plus phi2 over 2 theta times E bar. A2 is phi1 plus phi2 over 2 theta. E bar, so A1 and A2 are the same. Why is that? Well, the damage factors in the two countries are different, but the abatement costs are the same. And so since we should be having equimarginal abatement, of course, we get equal amounts of abatement. Then we get a bunch of parameter values. Phi1 is 0.06, phi2 is 0.12, so that's 0.18 over 2 theta is 0.2 times E bar, so that's 0.18 over 0.2, which is 0.18 times 5. Which is 0.9, isn't it? So we get A1 equals A2 equals 0.9. Well, that's good because that's what it says in the facet, I think, yeah. So that's A. And I'm going to rub off now and go on to B, and I'm running out of time. Okay. Find abatement costs for each coalition in first best, and find damages y bar psi I in 3 cases. Okay, so abatement squared is 0.81, so y bar theta is 100, so costs are 81, aren't they? Find the damages, 1,000 times psi. If we have no abatement, we've got E bar is 1, haven't we? So with no abatement, total emissions are 2. So damages, psi 1, psi 1, psi 2, no abatement, or E equals 2. If they both abate, we get E equals 0.2, and if one abates but not the other, we get 0.9, we get E equals 1.1, don't we? Phi 1 is 0.06, phi 2 is 0.12, so 0.06 times 2 times y bar, which which is 1,000. So 0.06 times 2 is 0.12. So then damages are 120, aren't they? If neither of them abate. And here, damages are 0.24, again, times 1,000, 240. I'm seriously running out of time. So then, if emissions are 1.1, 1.1 times this is 0.066 times 1,000 is 66, and this will be the double, won't it? It'll be 132. And if emissions are just 0.2 times this is 0.012. It's 12, isn't it? And this should be 24. Okay. Payoff matrices, you just want to construct out of this, don't you? So, coalition 1, coalition 2, dirty, clean, dirty, clean. So if they go dirty, dirty, then damages are 120, 240, aren't they? Which corresponds to what we're told in the question. If they go clean, clean, then they both have costs, 81, and they have these damages, don't they? So that's minus 93 for 1 and minus 105. For 2, if player 1 goes dirty but player 2 goes clean, then player 1 has no costs, but has damages of 66, so that's minus 66. Player 2 goes clean, so player 2 has 81 plus 132, 133 plus 80, 213, right? And if player 1 goes clean but player 2 goes dirty, and player 1 has cost of 81 and damages of 66, so that's 147. Player 2 has no costs but damages of 132. That's minus 132. Okay. And I'm out of time. I'm going to have to adjourn and come back. Okay, I'm back. So, oh, and the lights are off. So, what is the Nash equilibrium? Well, as you know, Nash equilibrium, no, there should be no regrets from individual players given the choice of the other players. So let's see if we can get our heads around this. So, if they both go dirty, then that's clearly going to be regretted by both, isn't it? They could both do better. So, if we got dirty, dirty, if player 2, coalition 2, went clean, they would improve their payoff. If coalition 1 went clean, no, coalition 1 going clean would actually worsen the payoff, where coalition 2 going clean would improve coalition 2's payoff, so therefore that's not a Nash equilibrium. What about this one? So if coalition 2 has gone clean here, if coalition 2 switched to dirty, it would get worse for coalition 2, so that can't be a Nash equilibrium. What about coalition 1 clean, coalition 2 dirty? Then coalition 1 went dirty, it would be better off. So this isn't a Nash equilibrium, is it? And what about this? If coalition 1 went dirty instead of clean, they're going to improve. So this isn't a Nash equilibrium either. So there's no Nash equilibrium in this game. I think I must have screwed this question up. Okay, so when I constructed this question, I thought there was a Nash equilibrium, but obviously I didn't take enough care, because there doesn't seem to be a Nash equilibrium, does there? But never mind. I was in a bit of a rush on this one. So we can still solve the question anyway and say, look, there is no Nash equilibrium here. Part D, find optimal emissions of each coalition in a non-cooperative game in which each coalition treats the behavior of the other coalition as exogenous. So it turns out, actually, with this game structure, with these, with the linear damage function, you can actually just solve explicitly for the Nash equilibrium given if you just let them choose any amount of abatement. Because of the linear damages, the choice of the one coalition isn't going to be affected by the choice of the other, basically. So it's super straightforward. So let's just think about pi 1, which is just y1, isn't it? Okay. And given the choice of A1. So we've only got one first order condition, and that's in A1. And as you can see, A2 just drops out here because of the linear damages. So A1's choice, coalition 1's choice isn't affected by coalition 2's choice here. So it's actually super straightforward, and we don't really need actually to set up that payoff matrix and so on. We can just solve. So we take the first order conditions, we know that the y bar is going to go out, and we're just going to end up with minus minus is plus phi 1 e bar minus 2 theta a1 equals 0. So phi 1 e bar is equal to 2 theta a1. So a1 is phi 1 e bar over 2 theta. And similarly, in the other case, for pi 2, then by symmetry we're going to get A2 is phi 2 e bar over 2 theta, aren't we? Let me just check the parameter values. So phi 1 is 0.06, e bar is 1, theta is 0.1. So it's 0.06 over 2 is 0.03 times 10 is 0.3. 1 times 0.12 over 2 is 0.06 times 10 is 0.6. So in laissez-faire, you're going to get 0.3 of abatement from coalition 1 and 0.6. So coalition 1 is going to abate 30% of their emissions. Coalition 2 is going to abate 60%. Because coalition 2 had higher damages, of course. Remember, in first best, they each abated 90%. Part E, what happens if the coalitions break up into 20 equal countries, 10 countries per coalition? So the parameters are the same, except that Y bar is now 100 and E bar is now 0.1. So I don't know if you can see this, but you could have 20 problems all looking roughly like this, but with 20 terms here, minus A1, minus A2, minus A3, and so on. And basically the problem is exactly the same, and the solution is going to be exactly the same. So the new A1 is now phi 1 E bar over 2 theta, and what were we told? So E bar is now 0.1, but these are the same, so we end up with 0.03 and A2 is 0.06. So now when the coalitions break up, these countries are only abating 3% of their emissions each, and the high damage countries are going to abate 6% of their emissions each. So the more countries can cooperate and lump themselves together in coalitions, the lower are going to be total emissions. So it's a very good thing for climate negotiations if countries can build together into strong coalitions where it's possible to agree, and then negotiate between the coalitions. Why can the coalitions agree? It's because they're neighbours, they have a lot of trade and so on, a la Nordhaus. So they have so much else riding on good relations that a lot more money effectively through trade policy and other things hanging on good relations, which means that they can agree on stronger climate abatement within the coalition and act as if they're one country with regard to climate. Okay, that is the end.